Michella Chester here for NCAA Digital. I am joined by Emily Minehart from College Gym News. We're going to break down gymnastics in general as we get closer to the postseason conference championships. We've got a lot to dig into, Emily. I'm going to start with the top four teams in the nation. Obviously, Oklahoma just on top, and then the next three kind of been back and forth lately. Can you kind of dig into those top four teams and what you've seen there?
Sure. Oklahoma has really illustrated that it's in a class of its own, which we sort of expected going into the season, but it's been clear from week one on that the Sooners are in it to win it. Recently, Olivia Troutman has been slowly adding more and more events back, which is always a good sign for the Sooners going into postseason. Behind them, Florida, Michigan, and Utah have been sort of back and forth in those next three spots. Michigan just took the number 2 spot back from Florida with a great 198 meet last Monday. So it's getting really exciting there. Everything is really tight, and those three teams are starting to put more and more pressure on Oklahoma. So the postseason should be really exciting.
Absolutely. And then right outside the top four, you've got UCLA and LSU. They've been flip flopping as well. What are your thoughts on those two teams?
The Bruins look great this year. Janelle McDonald has really turned that program up a notch. Jordan Childs and Selena Harris have just been on as two really star all-arounders for that team. And LSU has really overcome a lot of wild injuries. So many important players have been injured, and they just keep finding more routines to put up and get those big scores. So seeing the Tigers up there in that 5-6 spot is really impressive.
Definitely. And we haven't talked since before the season, I believe. So a lot of risers, a lot of fallers. What are some of your biggest risers and fallers since we last spoke?
Well, the last few weeks, both Missouri and Arizona State have just been on. They've been hitting 197s consistently, and that's really putting them in a great position going into regionals. They're currently sitting in spots that should be seeded, so that's a really good sign for both of those teams. Auburn has been falling back a bit. They've been scoring consistently, but as the teams behind them are starting to hit those 197s, they've been falling in the rankings a little bit. So that's one team that sort of needs to turn up the gas now that we're getting into postseason.
How about your biggest surprise of the year? Has anything really caught you off guard from where we started with your preseason top 25? What's been the biggest surprise?
Absolutely. Ball State has been such a pleasant surprise. I don't think anyone at College Gym News had them at the top of the MAC, but that's where they sit. They're just ahead of Western Michigan right now. Suki Pfister is an amazing vaulter, and we knew that, but she is just hitting and sticking consistently and is really leading that team into a really great position.
All right, that's exciting to see. So, like I mentioned, we're approaching postseason conference championships. What are some top storylines and things you're looking out for as we approach those conference championships?
There are some really exciting matchups coming in the conference championships. I think if Florida has even slightly an off day, it seems like LSU is going to be right there and able to maybe upset the Gators, which would be exciting. UCLA and Utah should have their usual Pac 12 battle, so that should be a great one as well. And in the Big Ten, if Michigan falters at all, Michigan State and Ohio State are right there. So that one should be another headliner.
Absolutely. And then as we approach regionals, are there any teams that are right on the edge that we should maybe be watching out for? Some bubble teams to watch?
Yes. So North Carolina is currently sitting in regional position, but it doesn't have a lot of upside left in its NQS. So there are a number of teams sitting right behind it that could knock it out. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Nebraska just passed North Carolina and could be the first of many. So that's very exciting to watch. Another thing to note is that Pittsburgh might end up being the first team to host a regional without qualifying to regionals. So
Oh.
keep an eye on the Panthers.
That's interesting. All right. So, one thing I want to bring up, Trinity Thomas has been really getting close to the top of that all time perfect tens list. There were a ton of perfect tens, I think 11 perfect tens in week 8 alone. Are these performances just really amping up as we get closer to postseason? What are you seeing there?
Gymnastics definitely gets cleaner as we get closer to postseason. Gymnasts are perfecting their handstands. The landings get better and better throughout the season. I think sometimes the judges get a little excited as postseason approaches and tend to be a little bit looser with their tens. So we've definitely seen a little bit of that this season. But Trinity Thomas is definitely getting close to that mark. I think everyone had their eye on Florida senior night, expecting her to get at least one or two, and then she didn't score any, which I think was sort of a little bit of a letdown, but we definitely have our eye on that number. I think she's 4 away at the moment.
She is. She's getting really close. And as we talk about Trinity Thomas, let's get a little update on the all-time, not the all-time, the all-around individual standings. So obviously Thomas is one to look out for there, and who else is really tight up there at the top with her?
Well, Jade Carey for sure, speaking of tens, as well as Jordan Childs. The three of them are just sort of ahead of everyone else. And then there's a little cluster of people like Jordan Bowers and Sumi Lee, who, with a big hit at nationals, could take that all around title.
Absolutely. All right. So lastly, let's take a look at some teams outside of the top 25. Are there any teams that are really making some noise that we should be aware of?
Lindenwood is having a great season. It's their first season competing as a Division One. They've previously been Division Two, and they're sitting at the top of the USAG standings right now, which is very exciting for that program. And then in the D3 rankings, Brockport, UW La Crosse, and UW Oshkosh are all really tight in there. So I think the NCGA Nationals are going to be really interesting this year.
All right. Well, Emily, thank you so much for breaking it all down. We've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. Conference championships, postseason just right around the corner. So thanks for breaking it down. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.